Coming to you from the shores of sparkling Lake Michigan, the National Writers Series welcomes you to Traverse City, where we are celebrating 15 years as a year-round book festival. We're the premier home for passionate readers who love inspiring conversations with best-selling and award-winning authors. Tonight, we welcome Katie Yee, the debut author of Maggie, or A Man and a Woman Walk Into a Bar. Maggie is topping all of the summer reads charts from the New York Times, Oprah Daily, and Time magazine. Some are comparing her resentment-tinged writing style to Nora Ephron's classic Heartburn. Katie Yee is a writer from Brooklyn whose work has appeared in The Believer, Los Angeles Review of Books, Literary Hub, and more. She's a past fellow of the Center for Fiction, Kundiman, and the Asian American Writers Workshop, and currently works at the Brooklyn Museum. When she's not writing, she's hanging out with her very judgmental rescue dog, Ollie. Yee will be joined in conversation by Ellie Katz, a reporter for Interlochen Public Radio whose pieces have been featured on NPR, Here and Now, Science Friday, and more. Previously, she worked for Heritage Radio Network, Frequency Media, Stitcher, and Michigan Public Radio. The National Writers Series salutes our amazing audiences, dedicated volunteers, and generous supporters for helping us raise the next generation of readers and writers through our free education programs across the region. This season of amazing authors is made possible through major support by the Green Brick Foundation, Northgard Technology Group, Golden Fowler Home Furnishings, Prout Financial, and Ward and Mary Bevins Gillette. Tonight's event sponsors are Amakal and The Folded Leaf. Tonight's live streaming is exclusively underwritten by Nancy Davey. Thanks to our major media sponsor, the Traverse City Record Eagle, and our media partner, Interlochen Public Radio. For information on future events, programs, and how to support our nonprofit work, please visit nationalwritersseries.org. Now, please welcome to the stage #1 New York Times bestselling author, Doug Stanton.
Good evening, everyone. Is this on? There we go. It's so nice to see you here. Welcome to the National Writers Series here at Northwestern Michigan College. As Kendall said, I'm Doug Stanton. I was backstage looking down the hallway, and if you look down the hallway in this room, you can see Jersey Mike's, the sandwich shop, just across the road. What does it have to do with me standing here tonight? It's a good question, and I hadn't thought about it until just about 20 minutes ago when I had this thought, which is that when I was Tess, our student reader tonight, her age, I was working at that very place, which was another sandwich shop. I was working there because I wanted to go to a place called Interlochen Arts Academy so badly that I gave up everything and worked there every day for a year and saved enough money to get back to Interlochen, because I had been there in 9th grade, but I had to skip 10th because of money and half of 11th. So being backstage tonight with Tess, Tarsak Hiss, and the wonderful Katie Yee, and watching the two of them talk to each other was a special moment. And your presence here makes all of that possible. It really does. What you see on stage tonight, this conversation, is a lot of fun. We hope it's entertaining, most of all, and meaningful and stimulating. But the back end of this, the legacy of this organization, the legacy of your presence here is what the changing of the lives that you're enabling, and by your support, to have Katie Yee talk with Tess in the green room before a show like this and mentor her in ways that she doesn't understand, I don't understand, but we'll come back to her in 10 years from now. And so I just wanted to share that with you because this really is a special thing. I want to acknowledge, Kendall does such a great job in the bios with our guests tonight. I want to acknowledge a couple people who are here. I want to acknowledge the host and the staff of the Interlochen Public Radio, which is centered at the Interlochen Center for the Arts. They're doing a fund drive right now. I'll be on the air on Monday to talk about the National Writers Series with the wonderful Ed Ronco, the news director there. But that is a treasure in this community. It's a treasure in Michigan, and it all needs our support right now more than ever. So if you have a nickel, if you have $5 or $100, really pick up the phone and make a donation. So yes. I say this selfishly because we've drawn from the ranks of the Interlochen Public Radio staff to be our guest host tonight. And one of them, of course, is Ellie Katz, the science reporter. She does wonderful work, and she's with her, yes, she does. I know her folks are here. They're clapping right now. Ellie works as the environment reporter. There's Claire Keenan-Kurgan. There's Izzy Ross, does climate solutions reporting. Ellie's with us tonight. Peter Payette, the executive director, has done an interview for us. Ed Ronco has done a couple. Amanda Sewell, she does the wonderful classical programming on the other side, 88.7. And then, so anyway, it's a great place. So it needs our support, and let's give it to them. And tune in on Monday at 8 a.m. because Ed Ronco does a fantastic job putting together clips from the past NWS shows, and we get to talk about them. Usually they're very funny and very entertaining. And last, just the NWS team, which makes this night possible. It's Ann Stanton, the executive director. Pam Darling does sponsorships. Audrey Irontree, our wonderful education manager. Kendall Kocher, she's the marketing manager. You heard her voice on screen here just a moment ago. Hannah Lee Klebb, the events and operations manager. She makes this whole thing happen. The microphones, the back end of it. Colleen Zanotti is our creative director. And then our board is Steve Bumgardner, Clark Bunting, Diana Mylock, Grant Parsons, Isaiah Smith, Ryan Sullivan, David Table, Lisa Thauvette, and Maggie Richards, who comes to us from New York, a recently retired publishing professional at one of the big four publishers in New York, who advises us on just what it is we're doing here in this business called writing books. So that is the end of my speech. We have a couple of things coming up. The fall classes are here. Sign up for them. They include spooky story writing, mystery writing, college essay writing, a sequel to screenwriting, and there's more. And Audrey Irontree is available through our website. And we're going to have virtual membership subscriptions soon, so you can stay at home. We prefer that you be in the room with us, but if you want, you can watch these anywhere across the United States, and people are. And then, of course, we have a big gala coming up, and our special guest is Robin Wall Kimmerer, who is the author of Braiding Sweetgrass, which many of you know, and also the new book, The Serviceberry, and that will be in partnership with the Grand Traverse Regional Land Conservancy, and that's going to be a big event for us and a big boost in what it is we need to do with our project. So if you can support the gala, again, it's on the website. That's about it. Let me tell you something about someone I'm very fond of, Tess Tarshak Hiss, who I talked about earlier. She's going to be a senior at TC West High School. And she's going to read tonight an essay that she wrote, and I'll let her explain what that is. Her teacher, Carly, her journalism teacher at TC West, was backstage with her. Carly Tenbush does a great job at West High School doing The Occidentalist. It's a wonderful newspaper. These are skills that set a student for life. And Carly's going to be the co-editor here in her senior year, so she's got a promotion. She likes to roller skate, play guitar, and watch The Simple Life, although she admitted backstage that over Christmas vacation, she and her sibling once binged the entire 27 seasons of South Park without getting up from the couch once. So maybe she can elaborate that when she comes on out here. Please now welcome our student reader this evening, Tess Tarshak Hiss.
Hello, my name is Tess. I'm an uprising senior at West Senior High, TC West Senior High. I wrote this piece originally for the Northern Express. It's a snippet. It's called Fostering Female Spaces on the Net. It was kind of a journalistic reflection of my time during COVID and how I sort of grew as a person, and many other people I'm close with also grew and adapted in response to the struggles that we were faced with during that time. The time had come, my mother's worst nightmare. I had lice. I had lice at the ripe old age of 12, posing two questions. First, can middle schoolers even get lice? And second, how did this even happen? At the time, we'd been stuck in COVID quarantine for a month. I was placed in double isolation, walking around my house with a hairnet, looking like Chris Farley in SNL's Lunch Lady skit, preventing any jumping joys from springing onto my mother while she plucked through my hair like a chimpanzee looking for a sweet treat. Despite this situation, there was an upside. Nobody from school knew that I was cursed, and no anonymous alarm was sent out to the parents of my peers that so-and-so had lice. I was saved from the embarrassment and the shunning. However, I was not saved from the countless hours in front of piercing white lights, sitting on the floor of the bathroom while my mom rooted out my infestation. To prevent my squiggling, an iPod Touch was thrown into my hands. An iPod Touch with 3 worthy apps: Subway Surfers, BitLife, and YouTube. I've always adored video games. Sims, Animal Crossing, Sonic, Pokemon, Hello Kitty Island Adventure, you name it. Cute animals and a fun house to decorate? I was drawn to gaming like a toddler with millennial parents glued to the iPads at an Olive Garden. Through these games, I developed a further sense of creativity. I made stories about villagers in Minecraft and mapped out my Animal Crossing island on the big poster board intended for my pre-COVID science project. Despite being stuck indoors, my world was large as my imagination ran rampant. My mother, who was a survivor of the Sims addiction back in her day, was hands-off regarding what I played. Working from home, she had priorities, and her daughter's screen time was not one of them. As much as I wanted to explain to her my Mario Odyssey speedrunning strategies, there was a generational and a situational disconnect. She was always preoccupied with her job and the world being on fire. At the time, the fear of being judged by my real-life friends over the lice situation was immense. Despite that, I wanted a community. I wanted a frequent force in my life whom I could admire, whom I could share common interests with. I turned to YouTube to find these figures. Female gamers on online platforms get a horrible reputation. On account of a few bad apples, a stereotype is perpetrated that all women who play video games are money-hungry, overly sexual clout chasers. I, and many others my age, found comfort in a specific group of women who knocked down these assertions and provided safe spaces. These spaces were uplifting to awkward teenage girls, embracing different backgrounds, interests, and various levels of weirdness. Watching YouTubers such as Ayaz Cupquake, Lauren Z Side, LD Shadow Lady, and Stacy Plays provided millions with warmth, equivalent to a hug, in a time where the closest physical interaction one could have was waving at the UPS driver dropping off a package at the top of a driveway. Even though video games provide dopamine and to doom scrollers and dungeon dwellers alike, finding a balance between Call of Duty lobbies and the outside world is key. For me, life is a lice-permeated highway. Therefore, if shutting down your brain and escaping the world of top 10 best Minecraft mods while an incandescent light bulb bleaches your eyeballs amidst a pet's pilgrimage on your scalp, go for it. Said highway is full of roadblocks, ranging from mite-size to a pandemic seizing the globe, shriveling it to a crisp. In moments like those, where your world is so unbearable it feels like a simulation, it's important to stay grounded in your present reality, instead of playing Papa's Pizzeria, alone, in the dark, until 4 a.m., losing yourself in your phony 9-to-5. The communities these female gamers assembled, while helping mold middle school girls into independent and eccentric young women, provided a safety net that preserved certain chronically online behaviors. After being forcefully exposed into the world after the first initial lockdown, these quirks shifted into a universal language of love and normal life, tying the string between those who were similarly drawn into these role models who exhibited strength and spunk and passed it down to their viewers who developed their own trademark moxie through their personal metal and transitioned into their own idols, sharing traits passed through their communities and embracing reality, standing up, parallel to the woman we doted on from our bathroom floors. Thank you.
Thank you, Tess. And thank you for listening and being here to hear her voice. Without further ado, as the screen rises into the heavens, I will now bring to the stage our guests of honor tonight, Ellie Katz and Katie Yee.
Mics are on.
Mics are on.
We're ready to go.
Ready to go.
Katie Yee, welcome to Traverse City. Welcome to the National Writers Series.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. I'm told that there are, 160 of you out here tonight, and this is by far the biggest crowd I have ever spoken in front of, so this is absolutely thrilling. And on a Friday night, thank you guys.
Traverse City showed up. Congratulations, I think, are in order. Your book was just published earlier this week.
Thank you.
Could you tell us a little bit about what it's about?
Sure. Yeah, bear with me. It's going to sound a little bleak, but it's fun, I promise. It's about a woman who discovers that her husband is having an affair right around the same time that she is also diagnosed with breast cancer, but in kind of a funny way where she names the tumor after her husband's lover. She starts talking to it, and she becomes really obsessed with the bedtime stories that she tells her own children and starts to infuse them with the Chinese mythology that her own mother imparted on her. But it's really a story about the things and the people and the stories that we reach for when the rest of the world just feels really heavy.
Yeah, okay, I've been reading this the last few weeks. I've noticed a few very specific reactions. One is people see the title, and you can kind of see their brains working, and then they repeat it back to me as a question, or as a joke. And then the second thing is I tell them the plot,
Yes.
like you just said,
Yes.
and their eyes kind of bug out of their heads, they cannot believe it. So I want to start there with these eye-popping kind of fun plot point of this narrator finds out her husband is having an affair.
Yes. Can I read a little bit
Yes,
from that
please.
section?
Yes,
'Cause
please.
I
That's a
think
great
this
way
will
to
be
start off.
I think this will be a good segue
Excellent.
into it.
Let's do it.
Okay. Just from the beginning. When my husband told me about Maggie, we were out, kidless, at a nice Indian restaurant. I should have known something was up. But the restaurant we were at was actually an all-you-can-eat buffet, so one can imagine the excitement that blinded me. The plates they give you at those things are never as large as you want them to be. They trust that you will not want to get up and down and pace around the buffet table so much. But I requested we get the table right in front of it. So we'll see when they replenish the samosas, I said to my husband, who simply shook his head but sat down across from me the way he always had. He laid the red linen napkin across his lap, which reminded me to do the same. My husband, always the man with good manners. When we first moved in together, with no furniture to speak of, we sat on the hardwood floor and ordered Papa John's. I remember he laid a tiny paper napkin across his knee with a great flourish that night, and I remember remembering that moment at the restaurant. Funny, isn't it? The things that stick. The first part of the evening was marvelous. An all-you-can-eat buffet, a place of possibility. I gorged on garlic naan and saag paneer. We drank creamy mango lassies out of stout goblets. Having the table near the buffet meant we got a lot of foot traffic. This, of course, made it incredibly awkward when my husband finally said what it was that he wanted to say. I remember thinking he had been eyeing the buffet line with a rare intensity all evening. At first, I thought he was just eager to get his second fill when the line was shortest. In hindsight, I think he was timing it such that no one would be within earshot when he said it. I had been in a good mood that day on account of the surprise fancy dinner. Don't get too excited. It's really not that nice, Sam had said when I was opening the door and making little exclamations of joy. When I was growing up, my family didn't eat out at restaurants much, and there are some things you never grow out of. I was yammering on about some gossip from the PTA, a very minor treasury scandal that isn't worth dwelling on. Then I guess my husband saw his moment, a clearing of the cars, a log to float on, and said it. 4 little words, I'm having an affair. Thanks.
See, it's like you know it's coming. Everybody knows it's coming except for her. It's like watching a horror movie or a train wreck or something about to happen. And I want to talk about it. She finds out about this.
Yes.
Weeks later, she finds out she has a malignant cancerous tumor in her breast.
Correct.
She names the tumor after her husband's lover.
Yes, the titular Maggie.
The titular Maggie. Where did that idea come from? Did you start with that or did that come later?
Honestly, Maggie started as a short story that kind of just got really, really, really long. She kind of kept rolling away from me. And I was thinking about how truly weird it is to have a body. I think,
Yes.
I'm not very good at taking care of mine. I don't know about you. I don't sleep at normal hours. Pizza Hut is a huge
Constant temptation.
Yeah, that's exactly. You get it. But there are so many moments in life, especially for a woman, that really force you back into your body. So I'm thinking specifically about, getting screened for breast cancer and going through those exams. Breast cancer is something that runs in my family. My grandmother, my mother, they both had it. So this is something that I think I had been trying to write about, trying to understand for a while. And then, the other something else that kind of puts you back in your body is having children, of course, the experience of childbirth, but also just raising kids, I think really forces you to be in the present tense and in your body. And I kind of wanted to capture all of that in one.
Was there a scene or a character that popped up when you were writing and you knew this is going to keep going, this isn't going to stop after 15 or 20 pages, this has to be a full-fleshed story?
I think when I start writing, I always kind of start with the voice. And I think I just had a really fun time writing this narrator. I hope she's funny, resilient, and observational. And I just wanted to spend more time in her brain, honestly.
We spend the whole time in her brain.
Yes, we do.
And for the good, for the bad, for the ugly, it feels like everyone besides her gets kind of a name or an identity to cling on to. Her best friend, the husband has a name, Maggie, the lover's name, the kids have names, the best friend's dog has a name, the spider living in the doorway of the house has a name. Yes. Except for her. Why not name her?
I love this question. Thank you for asking it. Okay, names are hard, first of all. I have a hard time coming up with them. And this is also a preoccupation that the narrator has. She even says, after she gave birth to her children, she really, hemmed and hawed on their names for a really long time, and then eventually her husband, Sam, was the one to name both kids. And I think, to name something is to lay claim over it, right? And that's why, she names the tumor herself after her husband's lover, and that's her way of saying, he has his Maggie, I can have mine, I'm gonna reclaim something about this story. But I think for the narrator specifically, I wanted her to not belong so much to me. I wanted her to belong to you and to all of you. And so I think in not naming her, that's what I was trying to get at there.
Where do you think that instinct came from? What felt different about her compared to other characters you've written?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think because so much of this book is about taking the reins back, of your own life and trying to figure out if the way you've been telling the story of your own life is still serving you. I think there was something about her in particular that I wanted to kind of grapple with this question of naming and ownership and autonomy with. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Did a name for her ever pop into your head, or was she always nameless?
Always nameless.
Okay.
Actually, at a different point, literally none of the characters had names. It was all my husband, my child, my other child, but that felt kind of tedious and confusing after a while. So.
Fair enough. Another big name, the titular Maggie. Where does that name come from?
Okay, does anyone else like Maggie Rogers? I love Maggie Rogers.
Yes.
Okay, yes. And I had been listening to a lot of her music, I think, during the time that I was writing this. And I think it's really important when you're writing to give even your quote unquote villain characters bits and pieces of people that you love and admire so that you don't like flatten them so much. So honestly, Maggie comes from like my deep love of Maggie Rogers.
Okay, what bits and pieces, if you could, from real life, from the people you know, made it into weaving these characters together?
Ooh, okay, yeah, I love this question. I mean, her husband's name is Sam. Gave him that name because honestly, two of my best friends, their names are Samantha and Samaya, and so Sam is like a name that I'm very used to saying.
And they were okay with that?
Yeah, they were totally okay with it. But yeah, it's just because like that's a name that I'm used to saying with such like love and adoration, and I thought that like at the line level, that familiarity and that comfort around that name would come through, even though the character of her husband is like could not be more different than my best friends.
There's also another really funny detail about him that kind of stuck out to me.
Okay.
She starts making lists about things she doesn't like about him.
Yes.
Once they're going through their divorce.
This is a great strategy if you're going through like heartbreak. Just start making lists of things that you never liked about the person.
One of the details on there is that he is a lover of movie sequels.
Oh my God.
Why is that a bad thing? Where does that, there's just so many fun little specific details like that. Where does that come from?
Okay, Ellie, I'm so glad you asked me this question. The tidbit about sequels is me. I love movie sequels with like an unchecked abandon. Okay, but Devil Wears Prada 2 is coming out soon. We're getting a Practical Magic 2.
Oh my gosh, we're living in a golden age.
We are living in a golden age of sequels. That's what I've been saying. I mean, my boyfriend is here in the audience tonight, and he makes fun of me for my deep, deep passion for sequels. And so it occurs to me that some people are not as big of a, do you like sequels?
I wouldn't say I do or don't.
Okay,
I feel pretty neutral.
You're
neutral about sequels.
Okay, we might have to do a movie
We can
night
work on that,
after this.
yeah.
I think we might have to work on that. But yeah, I mean, right, exactly. So even like I've put weird details of myself into some of these characters.
Even the villains.
Even
like
the
Sam.
villains.
Yeah.
Even the villains like Sam. Well, because I think like, and you know, a lot of the plot of this book does not follow the actual plot point of my life, right? Like, I'm not a mother. I myself did not have breast cancer. I watched a lot of my loved ones go through things that happen in this book. But, so it's not like a one-to-one. But I have like put bits and pieces and just tidbits of life into the book, even if it's not like the plot.
Let's talk about that for a little bit,
Yeah.
because I've spoken to a few people who have had the chance to read the book. And, you know, they've mentioned, how did she manage to write about having kids and motherhood without ever having had kids, writing about the experience of diagnosis and illness and surgery and healing? Where did that source material come from? What did you work from when you were kind of working in these spaces that you yourself haven't been?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I've been like adjacent in a lot of these spaces, right? So like mom and grandma both going through breast cancer. You know, I was there in the waiting room, you know, in the hospital. I was there in the, you know, as far as they let you go, really, I was there. And so I think that, you know, I was able to kind of observe a lot in those rooms. But I have a lot of imposter syndrome about this, honestly, because I think we expect people, I guess especially debut writers, to kind of write only about their own life. But I think fiction is kind of fun because I'm sick of being me, and I want to be someone else for a little bit. Yeah, I mean, honestly, the kids took me by surprise when this was just a short story. The kids were like barely part of it.
Really?
Yeah. At the
Where did they come from? Why do you think they appeared?
Where did they come from? The stork just dropped them off one day. And, no, I started taking this story really seriously as like a full-fledged novel at the time of like when the pandemic started, and a couple of things were happening to me and the world at around that time. I hit my late 20s and my boyfriend and I moved in together, which meant that we were, of course, getting all these questions about like, when are you gonna get married? When are you gonna have children? And at around the same time, you know, there was this global pandemic and there was all this violence happening against Asian Americans in New York City and everywhere. And those two things happening kind of on parallel tracks really made me think about whether or not I could bring children into the world who looked like me, even who looked half like me, who I like couldn't protect from the big pain of racism or divorce or like a family member getting sick. So writing motherhood was really my chance to sit with what I imagine the experience could be like. And into this, I have put all of my like fears and anxieties and also hopes and dreams about what motherhood could be.
Even reading this book, I felt like I sat with that kind of stuff. And it was hard sometimes, thinking about illness and divorce and all these unpredictable twists and turns that life can take. I imagine that was really magnified for you. I mean, how did you deal with facing all those really difficult things as you were completely immersed in the story and the characters?
Yeah, I mean, I think I tried to put like lifelines in the text for myself and also for the readers. People tell me that this book is funny, so you guys can be the judge, but she has this preoccupation with humor. She's really obsessed with trying to make her kids laugh. At a certain point, she just gets like this book of anti-jokes.
Anti-jokes, yeah, it reappears throughout the story.
Do you want to hear an anti-joke?
100%, Katie.
You guys want to hear an anti-joke? Do you want to hear something that'll make you smile? Your face muscles. That's all I got.
So there's lifelines like that.
So there's lifelines like that, hopefully. And then the best friend character is like a huge, like, angel of a character, I think. And she provides a lot of the levity that's in the book.
Darlene. She has a really funny profession to me, which is making urns.
Yeah.
Not for human remains,
no,
but for the endings of other things in life.
Yes.
Talk about that a little bit.
Sure. Etsy is a really cool place, and artists are so fun and so weird and so creative. So in the novel, the best friend Darlene, she's a ceramicist, and she starts making these urns to kind of like positive urns to celebrate the end of something that is no longer serving you, or that it's kind of a good thing that something has come to an end. So if that's something like you finally, you quit smoking cigarettes, like here's an urn for like the death of this habit. Things like that. You broke up with this horrible boyfriend, you get an urn. The company is called Earned It, but you are an, and I'm gonna be totally honest with you guys, this bit does come from real life. One of my best friends from college is a talented ceramicist, and she started making just vases with like, but then she put lids on them, and I was like, those look like urns. But she's a very bold person, and she uses a lot of color in her art, so they were like hot pink urns, right? Like urns with glitter on them. So I was sort of like, you should start this company, like that you should make urns.
In real life.
In real life, you should do, I said this like, however long ago college was, I said, you should do this, and I've given her, almost a decade, and she hasn't done it, so I said, it's going in the book.
Has she moved along on that at all, or?
No.
Okay,
I mean, she's an art therapist now, so that's also good. She works with children, so that's probably better.
Yes.
Better use of her time.
So little lifelines like urns sprinkled throughout the book to bring us back from despair.
Yeah.
I want to talk about something you said earlier, which is how you kind of write to the line, how things sound. I saw this quote of yours in another interview that talks about, you mentioned how you first go by how a sentence sounds, and then the characters and the plot kind of echoes from there.
Yeah.
Say more about how that process works for you.
Oh, strap in. I feel like we're about to go on like a whole tangent, so please forgive me. But when I read a book, I do not picture anything. And I'm told that that's kind of weird, and that some people can, when they're reading, see things like a movie, right? So like if like an adaptation is made, I don't know if you're like this. If an adaptation is made and they've cast the characters, are you like, that's not how I pictured them?
Never looks like the character.
But so you know what characters look
Yeah.
like when you're reading. And you can picture, like, if there's a book that's like, there's a tree and a pond and a picnic table, you can see all of that.
Yeah,
That's
100%.
That is crazy to me.
Not for you.
Not for me. I can't
Okay.
do that. I have a very hard time conjuring mental imagery. I've done a lot of research into this. There's like a whole Radiolab episode about it. It's called aphantasia.
Okay.
And a good you know what, actually, could we do this? Could everyone in the audience, could everyone close their eyes for a second? You doing it? Okay. Can you picture an apple? Okay, you can open your eyes now. And Ellie, I'm gonna ask you to describe what your apple looks like.
Green apple. I don't know why. Green apple, little stem. It's just kind of floating in the air.
Yeah.
That's what I see.
Okay, the fact that you even have that much detail is absolutely mind-blowing to me. So at the end of this talk, everyone should just turn to their neighbor and discuss what their apple looks like, because I find this fascinating. Because I can't picture things like that, I have a really hard time picturing like place, setting. For me, so much of reading, the pleasure of it is at the line level. I read and I write for the joy of like the sound of a sentence, the way that language feels.
Did that make it difficult to write a full novel?
Yes. Yes, and I'm gonna be totally honest with you. So much, I mean, this is like she's a slender gal. And because before this I really considered myself a short story writer, I had a really hard time getting to like a novel length. So much of my writing process, honestly, Ellie, was Googling like minimum words for a novel. And I remember the night that I finished the first draft, it was like 1 o'clock in the morning and I was at like 39,991 words. And you know what I did? I just went back through, and anytime there was a noun, I would be like, and the yellow jacket, I would just add color, the big pizza, whatever it is, you know.
Oh my God.
So that's kind of how I go about physical description, apparently.
Did that process, I mean, so how did you eventually get it to a full novel from that point? Did your editor kind of help you flesh things out, or was it in final form when you had those 39,999 words?
I mean, it's longer than that now, not by much.
Okay.
But so much of the editing process for me was like my agent and then my editor kind of going in and being like, you've built like the structure of the house.
Okay.
We have the skeleton and we just need to like put some paint on the wall. We just need to kind of like make the rooms feel a little cozier, you know? So a lot of their notes were just like, can we stay in this scene for another beat? Can she sit with this feeling or this thought for another like 4 lines? And kind of bit by bit, they drew out the rest of the novel that way.
Were there any scenes where they really wanted more that kind of took you by surprise?
Ooh, that's a very good question.
Think about it.
I will think about it. The only thing I'm actually thinking of now is a note from my mom, which is not the question that you
Tell us.
asked. My
The
mom,
ultimate editor.
truly. My mom's note was sort of like, you should make the kids fight more.
Really?
She said, you and your brother are always fighting. So any scenes where they're bickering probably came from that conversation.
That's why I feel so realistic. Let's talk about your mom more, because I think the other thing that I noticed about this novel is how much, you know, there's the story of her divorce, of her illness. There is the mythology that's woven through. But the other scenes that are often woven through are ones where she's flashing back to spending time with her mom.
Yeah.
Where did that desire to weave that in come from?
Moms are so important. And for me personally, like I totally credit my love of writing and storytelling to my mother. I'm very lucky. I grew up with bedtime stories every night, but my absolute favorites were my mom was like a classics major in college, so I always got the like toned down version of all the Greek mythology, you know, and also some Chinese myths like from her and from my grandmother. And those always felt the most special to me because, I mean, like, having a story read to you is really nice, and you can see the pictures, which apparently was very necessary
Crucial.
for me as a
Yes.
child. But there was something about the myths coming like right from her, right? Like almost from her, like just from her memory, in a more direct way that felt really, really special. And I think, yeah, just so much of my love of storytelling comes from this kind of oral tradition passed down from mothers, and I wanted to honor that.
When you sat down to write this, were there any myths you remembered your mom telling you that you thought, I have to include this, I have to start here?
There was one, I think the thing that really kicked the Chinese myths off was, I remember being like 6 years old, and I was standing in the driveway with my grandmother, actually, and we were looking at it was nighttime, so we were looking at the moon, and it was like a pretty full moon, and it had all those like speckles on it. And she said to me, she was like, Katie, did you know that the Chinese believe that there is like a tree on the moon, and there's a man up there that cuts it down every night, and it grows back. He's being punished for something. So the tree grows back every night, and he has to keep cutting it down, and it grows back. And that's where the shadows on the moon come from. And I thought that was so interesting.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite ones that made it into the book.
Thank you.
I mean, were there any, like, did you write them all from her memory of her reciting them to you? Did you have to kind of look for more? Where did the other ones come from? There's so many, and they were some of my favorite parts of the story.
Thank you. It's really hard to find. I mean, maybe I'm just like a really bad researcher, and actually, since you are a journalist, I would really love your help with this if you're willing. But I had a really hard time researching Chinese myths in particular. There is like no shortage of anthologies of Greek mythology, but I had a harder time finding the Asian myths. So a lot of them do come right from like what I remember. And I had my mom fact check some of it just from her own memory, because we didn't have any text to go off of there.
Wow.
But she was still feeding me myths like up until like I was finishing the draft, because I would be sitting at this like diner with her for lunch, and I'd be like, oh, I'm working on my book, and she'd be like, what's it about? And yeah, I would be like, this is where I'm kind of getting stuck, but there's like these myths, and she was like, she was saving it. She was like, did I ever tell you this one? And then,
She was pulling out more as
she
you were
was pulling
writing.
out more. She'd been holding out on me.
Wow. So was it always, did you have this ritual of meeting up, or was it you'd call her? How did the process work?
When I was a very small child, like in preschool, on Mondays, my mom would always take me to this diner, the Seaport Diner. It's no longer there, of course, very sad. Like an incredible old school diner. You could still smoke cigarettes inside, like a deep Brooklyn diner. And we would get a plate of French fries, and I would have a vanilla milkshake. And that's really when our like storytelling time was, because my brother would be with my grandmother that day. So this was like our weekly tradition. So that's totally where it started. And I think we still just go to other diners to capture that feeling.
This is something that happens in the novel too, to a degree. There's this restaurant that the narrator flashes back to having meals with her mom in, and then after her mom passes away, she goes there, she meets her future husband. It feels like her mother is such a present part of this story. And you mentioned that your mom also had breast cancer. Did that come before you wrote this or after? Was it part of the inspiration for the story?
Yeah, both. It's kind of bookended this story in a lot of ways. So she had it when I was younger, when I was like a preteen, like 13-ish. But they caught that like very, very early, and it was kind of a smoother situation. And actually, if I can be hopefully not too bleak, if I could be really honest, the day I sold my book, she was diagnosed with breast cancer again.
Wow.
I got the call that the book had sold when I was standing outside her hospital room.
Oh my gosh.
But that is so much of what the book is about, though, right? Like, it's kind of like there's so much good and there's so much bad, and there are people that we can lean on during times of both.
What was it like to get all that news on that day?
It was complicated. It was really complicated. And of course my mom is like so wonderful. She felt so guilty. She was like, I'm sorry, this is supposed to be like a really good day for you. And I was like, no, I'm really happy that I could be here for you. But honestly, it was really special that we were able to spend so much time together at the beginning of this process. Because I think, I mean, obviously I would give anything for that not to be the case. But just because as we were kind of figuring out what her treatment was going to look like, she and I were spending a lot more time together in a way that, like, you know, if she wasn't sick, I would have been at work. I probably would only see her like once every couple weeks. But there was a point there at the very beginning when I was seeing her like every day. And that's also when all the exciting like news of like the book sale and like this update and that update were coming in. And I think it was horrible and special that we got to spend that time together. She's happy about the book. It's dedicated to her, so she's really happy about that.
I'm curious about her reaction because it sounds like so much of that story is embedded in this story. What did she think of kind of being a part of this nameless narrator's story in maybe such an intimate way?
You know, you never know how parents are going to react to things. And I was really nervous that she would be like, why? You know, like maybe this is like a little too personal. Maybe this feels a little bit too close. And I remember after she read an early draft, she called me up and I was like, okay, let's hear it. And she was like, well, it just feels like there's a lot of detail from our lives in here. And I was like, I could take anything out, like anything that you're not comfortable with. But the thing she really landed on, she was like, this lamp that you describe. She was like, we have that lamp somewhere, right? She was like, where is it? Like, did you leave it at college? She was like, I'm looking for this now. And I was like, okay. That's really not what I thought you were gonna say. No, she was fine with the rest of it. She just thought it was interesting that I had been stealing furniture and putting it in the book. But as has been established, I can't picture things, so I need to describe things that are in front of me.
Did the lamp stay on the final draft?
Yeah, the lamp is the lamp that the kids have in their room.
Okay. Incredible. Had you worked on other short stories, like as personally with, you know, you describe asking your mom to recall these myths and kind of having that interpersonal process, that external part of the writing process. It's not just you in your head, it's her, maybe some other details from folks in your life. Is that something you had done in your writing before?
Ooh, probably not to this extent. I mean, I think I'm always like a little squirrel, you know, like just squirreling away bits and pieces and nuts for winter. Just like weird, you know, daily observations or snippets of conversation that you're hearing. I think a lot of writers, hopefully I'm not alone in this, a lot of writers are kind of storing up things that just catch their ear. But I will say all the short stories that I had worked on before this delve more into like a magical realism, like surreal territory. And for me, when I set out with this story that later became the book, I wanted to challenge myself. So I was like, no more magic. You're like restricted to the rules of the real world.
How come?
I just like a challenge. I think writing is more fun when you can like push yourself and surprise yourself and not do the same, like not lean on the same tricks again and again. So this is just a fun little experiment that I was doing. But I wanted to see what I would reach for at the spot when I might bring in something like mystical. And I think that the things that the narrator, our narrator, was reaching for instead of like magic were humor, and they were mythology, which I think is kind of close to a kind of magic.
Totally. Did it change how you view yourself as a writer?
Publishing this?
Yeah, I mean, challenging yourself with writing in a different style, writing a full novel. I mean, how did that change how you think about yourself and your work?
That's a good question. I mean, I had a really good time writing this. Good. I hope it shows, despite the heavy subject matter. Now I know I can do it, 40,000 words at least, so that is, I guess, a confidence boost. The thing that I'll say is kind of a bummer is I really thought that imposter syndrome would go away after this was I thought after it was sold, I thought after it was published, I was like, come Tuesday, which is when it came out, I was like, that's it. I'll be free of the writerly imposter syndrome. I will be able to very confidently call myself a writer. Not so. So that hasn't changed, but the thing that has changed, I think, is because you write, by yourself a lot of the time. It's like a very solitary activity. Yeah. But then like publishing a book is like a team effort. And I think just because so many people who are so much smarter than me have touched it, and like honestly, even conversations like this, Ellie, obviously you're so smart and cool and brilliant. And yeah, just the fact that you're like willing to sit up here and have this conversation with me and spend time with these characters in this story, I think gives me at least a little bit more confidence. Like, it makes me feel less able to be like, don't read it, it's stupid, Which is the way I feel like I approached writing before this, is like I'm working on something, but don't look at it.
What other feelings came with having your work out in such a big way? You had published short stories before, obviously, but this is kind of another level. How did it feel to have that out there, kind of heart open to the world?
We'll see. It's only been open to the world a couple of days.
This is true.
I just feel incredibly lucky, honestly. I have never wanted to do anything else with my life. I have literally always wanted to be a writer. So, I mean, this is my literal dream. So pinch me. It's kind of how I feel about it.
Now that you've arrived here, does it feel like work, or does it still feel like something else?
Ooh, I like this question. Okay, I want to be really careful with how I answer this, because I think it's important to acknowledge the work of writers and artists and filmmakers, dancers, singers, all of that as work, because that has to do with the way that we value the arts in society, right? And I feel like, I don't think anyone, I don't need to tell you this, like these things are heavily undervalued. So in that sense, yes, I do think that it is work, and that it is really vital work to do this. At the same time, though, I really want to preserve a sense of play and fun in my writing just for myself.
Yeah.
I never want that to go away. A lot of my friends asked me when I sold the book if I was going to quit my day job. I work at the Brooklyn Museum. This is like my 9 to 5. I do email marketing. And my answer is no, because I think health insurance is good.
Practical girl, I like that.
Yeah, and you need rent money. Steady income is also super helpful. But more than that, I think I don't want to be leaning on my writing as my sole source of income. I think that robs me of a sense of like joy and play within the craft.
Interesting.
I also think working a job keeps you humble, and I think that's important.
Totally. Now that it's not all done and dusted. You're about to go on a book tour across the Midwest.
This is the first stop.
First stop. Traverse City, Michigan.
I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so happy you're here. I'm so glad you made it here to Northern Michigan. Now that you kind of have the story itself behind you, myths are such a big part of this. The stories we tell ourselves about our life are such a big part of this. The stories we tell others about our life. Is there one myth that you wove in through writing this, or that you researched while writing this, that you think is a good myth to live by, that you think is something that kind of sticks with you after?
Ooh, okay, you've really stumped me on this one. A myth in the book, or a myth like in general?
Either one. You're my go-to myth person now.
I know. Oh my gosh, this is a lot of pressure. Okay, the thing that's like immediately coming to my mind does have to do with spiders.
Okay.
So but I'm thinking.
Let's hear it.
It's in the book. It's the myth of Athena challenging arachnid
Sounds right.
to like a weaving contest, and because she is so good and Athena is less good at it, she turns her into a spider. And I've been thinking about this because it's essentially, when you boil it down, it's like a woman who is so good at her craft that she is condemned to it. Yeah, and I do think that a lot of like debut novelists, I feel like a lot of my friends have been advising me like, you should start something else now, like so that you don't feel like your whole soul as a writer is tied to like a first project. So I think that's something that I've been thinking about.
Do you feel like that now?
Now I just feel good because this is fun.
Yeah, good, that's how it should be. I'm gonna ask the question that your friends have been asking, which is, now that you've written this debut novel, have you had a chance to kind of take a breath and think about what you might want to write next?
So I work at the Brooklyn Museum. I've been there for like 2.5 years. We're in a museum right now. Museums are really cool places, super interesting, really important, especially now. And I also think museums are a place of like great secrets. I think there's a lot of room for, I mean, even like to walk onto this stage, there was like, I feel like a secret like doorway, you know?
Totally.
And in the Brooklyn Museum, I've been there 2.5 years and I still get lost. Like there are still doors and codes I don't know, and like hallways that I have never seen. And that kind of feels magical. So I think whatever I'm doing next, I kind of want to make my 9-to-5 job work for me in that way, where I will set something there and make use of this knowledge.
Perfect. Back to the magical realism, you think?
Maybe.
Okay. I'm so excited to read that.
Thank you.
Katie, would you read us a little bit of the book?
Oh, a little bit more of the book.
A little bit more,
Oh.
if you could.
Sure. Should I just pick up from where we were?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Do you guys want to know what comes after that? Okay, so I'm having an affair. Honestly, my first inclination was to laugh. Not because what he said was funny at all, no, but because his confession was just so surprising. It's been my experience that when you're confronted with something you don't know what to do with, the human body sort of just naturally, nervously guffaws. I thought surely it was part of a joke I wasn't quite getting. One of Sam's bits. Sometimes he says totally random things just to see if people are listening, like a mic check. He just wants a reaction out of you, like the mix and match game he played with the kids at bedtime, only with higher stakes. Risky, a bad punchline. I'm having an affair, just like that, a punch to the gut. I watched his face for signs of a joke, the curl of a smile tugging at his lips, but his mouth stayed in that same sharp line. Could a mouth be so piercing? It was the floor giving out, the wolf after all. When I would tell this story over and over again to Darlene, a way to process, we would take to calling it a total N-A-A-N, sequitur, because they're at an Indian restaurant. Jokes are funnier when you explain them. In romance movies, when you meet the person you're supposed to be with, time parts. It has a way of happening around the two lovers. In action films, when someone dies, there is that similar slowing down. Time bends for those on the precipice. Anyway, I'm having an affair. Sam's words hung solidly in the air. They didn't dissipate like some phrases, love you, after the I has been dropped. That night, time stretched to accommodate my delay in response. The first natural question, who is she? They say that the human brain is incapable of creating faces. This means that every stranger you encounter in a dream is, in fact, someone who exists in real life. In this waking nightmare, it was the same. It was someone I knew surely, someone I had seen, even in passing. A perky assistant at work, one of his more serious ex-girlfriends crawling out of the woodwork after all this time, a woman in a beige raincoat waiting for the bus, a very fit runner with a sleek ponytail jogging next to him in the early morning, our favorite barista who hands us our large drip coffees every morning but only charges us for smalls. Prolonged eye contact, beating around the bush, the electricity of a carefully planned casual touch to the arm, sharing a HuffPost article because it reminded you. A totally innocent and coincidental run-in at a coffee shop on the other side of town, splitting a pastry, the way the possibility of a missed text message can burn a hole in your pocket. The siren glow of a phone screen in the middle of the night. I was just thinking about you. The intensity of a long-delayed first kiss, teasing photos, dinner at her place, cold plates, candles, sinking into the couch like a slow and willful slide into the mud. Deleted text messages on his end, whoever she is, I'm sure she's kept it all. In the wickedness of my imagination, even in that split second, from the depths of my subconscious, I pictured her as a white woman. Pretty, dirty blonde, they could be siblings, that type of thing. Even in that blink of a moment, I somehow knew. Conjured up this person who looked like she fit a little bit better next to Sam. I replayed all of our interactions for the past few months, counted the number of nights he was late coming in from the office, the way I pitied him and said he should stop working so hard. Heated his dinner and hung up his coat, the pockets of which were probably still warm from some other woman's touch. Thanks.
It is so lovely to hear you read that out loud, as heartbreaking as it is.
Thank you.
We're going to take some audience questions now. As you think of questions for Katie, I have one last question for you.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe more than a lot of other characters I read, I wondered so much what happened to her. What do you think happens to her after her story with us ends?
What do I think happens to her?
Yeah.
That is none of my business. I mean, I don't know concretely what happens to her, but I am an optimist, and again, despite the heavy subject matter, I do think that this is ultimately a pretty hopeful book. So I think there are kind of seeds for things that she's thinking of as her next steps, career-wise, things like that, but I think she's gonna be okay, no matter what she's doing next, was the important thing to me.
I'm very glad to hear that. Me too. Anyone have questions? Want to start us off?
Don't be shy.
Welcome to Traverse City.
Thank you.
So Hannah gave me your book. Hannah's a good friend of mine, and gave me your book several months ago, and it sat on my nightstand for several months. I'm a mom of two, very busy, and I couldn't help but notice how visually appealing the cover is. And it got me thinking just now as you're talking about your book and being a debut novelist, did you have any say in the way the artwork was done for the cover of the book, like the greens, the pinks, or was that all out of your hands?
It's usually out of your hands. They do have you do this really fun exercise that was kind of a challenge for me. They have you do kind of like a Pinterest board, like a mood board. So you can put on there any art that you really like, anything that kind of speaks to the vibe. It was really giving 90s scrapbooking, which spoke to my millennial soul. So they have you put together a little slideshow like that. And also they want to know what covers you love, and most importantly, what covers you hate. So that was really helpful. And I think one of the things that I had said was just because the title is so long, I was like, it might be a lot to do text and image. So I would also be down for, again, because I can't picture anything, just an all text cover. And they came back with this, and I mean, it's just so bright and lovely. I feel really lucky.
It does, yes. It reminds me of the Maybelline mascara from childhood. I think they still sell it. It's a green and a pink.
The green and
you know
pink.
What I'm talking about? Yeah, it's iconic. Yeah.
Okay, can I tell you something so funny? I haven't worn that mascara in a really long time, but right before coming on this tour, I bought one of them because it matches.
Yes, it does. It does.
You and I are right there.
I know. And your green nails, it looks great. Anyways, I loved the book. It was such a nice breath of fresh air. And you describe it as bleak, but it's not. It's so hopeful and wonderful. So well done. Congrats.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being the first question.
Go ahead.
Testing. I also cannot visualize things.
Oh my God, there's two of us.
Fun fact, yeah. Learned that my husband can, and I was like, what do you mean you see it?
Yeah.
He's like, no, I see it. I'm like, that's not real.
Yeah.
You're lying.
That's rude.
What do you like to read?
Ooh, what do I like to read? That's a very fun question. I feel like when someone asks you what books you like, all of a sudden you're like, I've never read a book in my entire life. I actually don't know how to read. I like to read a lot of, I think, what I'm trying to write towards. So a lot of my reading is kind of influenced by projects that I'm working on. So I think with this one, oh my God, I have so many book recommendations. How long do you have? I mean, Nora Ephron's Heartburn, such a great divorce novel. Delia Ephron, who co-wrote all of those fantastic rom-coms with her sister Nora, wrote this amazing memoir called Left on 10th about her sister's death and then her own cancer diagnosis and her husband's death. But it's also incredibly warm and heartfelt. Department of Speculation by Jenny Offal, a very fun, fragmented story of a marriage falling apart. These were kind of influential for this particular project. But in general, I would say I like kind of the weird girl short stories. Like I mentioned, some magical realism. Amy Bender. Is this interesting?
Yes.
Okay. Amy Bender's The Girl on the Flammable Skirt is my favorite short story collection. Highly recommend. And then just for funsies, recently I've been reading celebrity memoirs because it's fun to spend time with.
I was going to ask, what are you reading as you travel? You have a lot of plane rides lately.
We have a lot of plane rides. I did just start reading Susan Choi's Flashlight, which recently came out, which I'm super excited for, which is not a celebrity memoir. But other than that, I'm reading Lauren Graham's memoir right now, Talking as Fast as I Can. You guys know Gilmore Girls? Yeah, okay. It's fun. It feels like you're sitting with her. It's nice. Thank you for your question.
Oh, please, I work here. You go say it.
Go ahead.
I just want to say humor, what I take away from you most is don't ever let humor leave your world. Don't you think?
Yeah.
Because I always say,
Thank you for saying that.
oh, you're welcome. Because I think that there's a lot of things you can't control. And so I think that, when someone says, what do you remember about you? I'm going to take that away, that you find things funny, even though it's painful.
Yeah.
And so I think that my friend just recently had cancer, and her oncologist said, you need to be with Kim and Lee, like my husband and me, because they make you laugh. And so she said, watch funny things on TV, hang out with people that find things funny.
Yeah.
So thank you for bringing that to the book, as a mainstay.
Thank you so much for saying
You're welcome.
that.
Hi,
Hello.
Hannah. Hi, I was referenced earlier. And because you brought it up and it hadn't been directly said on stage, you've been compared a lot in the press to being the next Nora Ephron.
Feel very lucky about that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, how does that make you feel? And have you met Delia? I think she blurbed your book.
She blurbed it. I have not met her.
Okay.
I did go watch her. Her memoir was just turned into a play on Broadway. So I went and saw that, but she wasn't there. So, but I feel incredibly lucky. I mean, I grew up, kid of the 90s, just falling in love with the world of You've Got Mail and When Harry Met Sally. And I think that those movies that she wrote were so largely influential to my sense of love and relationships and living in New York and and the way that dialogue should sound. She's got a really good ear for that, I think. So feels good.
Did you think about her at all when you were writing, or did this kind of comparison take you by surprise, or how do you think it came about?
I think about maybe halfway through writing the novel, I learned about the novel that she wrote called Heartburn. For some reason, I missed it. I read her essay collection. I Feel Bad About My Neck and Other Concerns About Being a Woman, which is also hilarious. Highly recommend. But I didn't know that she had left us one amazing novel. And I read it when I was halfway through with my book, and I was like, there's a lot of common ground here, and that feels really good. I feel like when I encounter something like that kind of speaks to what I'm trying to accomplish in a project, to me it almost feels a little bit fated, a little bit like the universe is you're on the right track, kid, keep going. So I feel really lucky that the comparison has been made.
Totally, well deserved.
Thank you. Thanks, Hannah.
Hello, Well, Katie, thank you so much for coming to Traverse City. We have a question from the live stream. We have many viewers across the country watching, so thank you so much for tuning in, even if it's not now, but later. Our question from the live stream is, well, first of all, congratulations on your debut novel.
Thank you.
Second of all, question is, how does it feel to have your book in the audience with all these humans who are going to read it as a debut author?
I'm in the perfect space right now where none of you have read it. So I assume that you only have optimism about liking this book, and I like being in front of you now at this stage.
Totally good answer. We have another question as well. So how has your work at the Brooklyn Museum informed your writing of this book? Obviously, working in a museum, there's a lot of visual art there, and especially in email marketing, there's a lot of visuals in that as well. Has that helped you write the book, or maybe it hasn't?
That's an interesting question. I think a lot of the seeds of this book came before I started working at the museum, so I think that might be more influential towards the next one. What I will say about having a job and writing, I do email marketing for like a large institution, so a lot of what that entails, as I'm sure is like no surprise to a lot of you, I write a lot of the emails that are like from other people, which means that you kind of have to learn how to take like a style guide and know the tone, the expected tone of the institution, while also making it seem a little bit individual to each director that you're writing from, like an intro from, things like that. And I kind of think that speaks to what a short story collection tries to accomplish, where there's like some theme, there's probably some central questions or messages, but then there is variety within that. So that's, I think, how the job has affected the writing. Thank you for that question.
I have another question.
Oh, yeah.
I am wondering what your physical writing routine is. Like, do you have a snack that you gotta have nearby? Do you have like a certain beverage? Give us the whole image of your desk or wherever it is that you write.
I'm a night writer, and I also like writing at my desk at home. I'm very lucky. I have a little home office, which is lovely. I like to enjoy my rent, so I like to sit there and be surrounded by all of my things and by all of the books that I love. But yeah, I write predominantly at night, and especially since I do work during the day, and I feel like the day is so short. I'm sure you feel this way. By the time you get home and make dinner and then do dishes and shower, it's bedtime. I don't know how that happens. So it's really been a process of figuring out how to carve out this time. But because I'm kind of a night owl, I think the hours between like 10 and 1 a.m. are really ripe for me. I sit down with like a glass or two of Lambrusco.
Okay.
Highly recommend. Gets the mind flowing. And then I write mostly by hand.
Oh, wow.
I like the feel of a new notebook. I think there's something magical that happens when you're typing, the thoughts come out so fast. I feel like you don't have time to kind of consider each word and let it surprise you in the way that it does when you're writing by hand. So that's a big part of my process too.
Pen, pencil?
Pen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you go back and scratch out and edit by hand too?
Yes. Yes.
Wow.
Usually what I'll do is I'll write a scene, and then the next day I'll write it again, and I'll write it again, and I won't look back. So it kind of gets more and more refined as I'm writing it by hand, and anything that I remember that is good enough to remember the next day, I think will come out in the next day's like long form writing of it.
Wow.
And then it's not until I feel that every word is exactly where I want it to be that it goes into the computer.
Okay. How many notebooks did you fill up writing this?
Ooh. I was working on this on and off for the past 5 years, so
wow.
Easily between like 7 and 10 notebooks, but not all of this being Maggie.
When you look at them now, is it kind of like, I cannot see that anymore? Or is it like a keepsake that means a lot to you?
It's kind of a nice keepsake. Okay. I'm like, oh, look at her when she was just learning how to walk.
Any other audience questions tonight for Katie? One in the back? Yeah, feel free to come up to the microphone.
how did you meet your publishing and editorial coworkers, so to speak?
Yeah, this is a great question. I had the good fortune of, I majored in English in college, and I thought that meant I absolutely had to work in publishing. And I say this to a lot of younger writers and students that I talk to. Those are very different skill sets, which it did take me many years to realize. I have only love and respect for editors because I don't think that is actually where my strengths really lie. But from having worked in the publishing world, I worked at this website called Literary Hub for 5 years before I started my job at the Brooklyn Museum. And that was a really good kind of bird's eye view of the industry and kind of getting to know the lay of the land. So I kind of, when the time came, I knew a little bit about how the process worked, but what I would really recommend to anyone is if I take it that you're a writer? Yes, okay. Are you working, can I ask what you're working on?
I'm currently working on writing a video game.
On writing a video game. Okay, I will not be even a little bit helpful in this case because I don't know anything about that, but that sounds amazing. And I do want to hear about that. Okay, well, the process is probably a little bit different there, but what I might recommend, with books, I like to say make a stack of all the books that you think your work is like or that you've really loved, and go to the acknowledgments and see who they thank as, as their agent, as their editor, as any early magazine that published them, as any fellowship that they've received, and I feel like that is a good starting list for you to start querying those agents or to start applying to those fellowships or submitting to those magazines. I'm not sure, do video games kind of have a similar acknowledgments section maybe, or in interviews to game creators?
Not that I know of, but I might write a book in the future, so
okay, yes.
I'm trying to keep my options open, so.
Heck yeah, that's so interesting. I love that you're experimenting with storytelling in so many different forms.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was very nice to meet you.
Thank you, same here.
Looks like we've got one more question.
All right, last one.
Congratulations, Katie.
Thank
it's great having you here.
It's so great to be here.
And I just wanted to let you know that I really love the reference to the moms. Happened to be Ellie's mom.
Oh my gosh! Well, Ellie is an absolute delight and a genius, so thank you for her.
Oh,
and on that note,
and just one shout out, this is a little self-serving, to my sister who is a cancer survivor and is watching this online. So thank you very much.
Shout out to your sister. Thank you so much.
one more question? Perfect.
Yeah, well, no, I just wanted to make a comment. We really enjoyed your conversation, and like the other guest said, I think what really came through is your enthusiasm and your positivity and your joy. And I just hope for you, if it's something that you choose, that you come back to see us 20 years from now when maybe writing is your day job and it continues to be joyful for you. So
Thank
we'd
you
love
so
to have
much.
you back.
Thank you. That means a lot. Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure to be here. You guys are just the best audience we could have hoped for, I think.
Totally.
Yeah.
Katie, thank you so much for coming to Traverse City. Thank you for being here at the National Writers Series. Go buy the book, everyone. It's out there in the lobby. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this special presentation from the National Writers Series. Coming up Saturday, August 9th at 7 p.m., don't miss an evening with Robin Wall Kimmerer, author of Braiding Sweetgrass and her latest novel, The Serviceberry. This event is an exceptional opportunity to hear Robin's powerful message of a gift economy, a shift from capitalism and scarcity toward abundance, much like the humble serviceberry that generously distributes its fruit to the ecosystem around it. Following Kimmerer, don't miss our 2 Traverse City food and wine events with Anthony Porowski of Queer Eye, along with a panel event where Top Chef winners dish about reality TV cooking shows. For more information, go to nationalwritersseries.org.